Epilogue. Part 1 in Red Dead Redemption 2 is often seen as the calm after the storm, but beneath the peaceful surface, it quietly shows the long-term consequences of the van der Linde gang's collapse. What makes this chapter so interesting is that it's not simply about John Marston rebuilding his life. It's about how every choice, mistake, and betrayal from the gang's final days still affects the world long after the gang is gone. And in many ways, this part of the epilogue highlights exactly what went right and what went wrong for the remnants of the van der Linde gang. One of the biggest things that went right is John finally having the chance to be a real father and partner, something that was nearly impossible during his years with Dutch. Working for ranchers, earning wages, and keeping his head down allows John to grow into a version of himself that Arthur would have wanted to see. The fact that he manages to stabilize a home life with Abigail and Jack, even if temporary, shows the real impact Arthur had on him. Everything Arthur pushed for in his final moments starts to take root here. Responsibility, honesty, and a chance at redemption. In many ways, Epilogue Part 1 represents the dream Arthur never got to live himself. But even though John is trying to change, the wrong parts of the gang's history still cling to him like a shadow. He struggles to adapt to normal life because the world sees him as an outlaw first and a ranch hand second. And it's not just society. John himself doesn't fully know how to function without violence or running. When he tries honest work, he constantly bumps into situations that remind him of what Dutch made him. The gang may be gone, but the habits they built in John still remain. He's stuck between wanting to change and not knowing how to be anything other than what Dutch taught him. Another thing that becomes clear is how the world itself has moved on without the gang. Back in the gang's prime, Dutch could talk about freedom, survival, and fighting against the government. But in the epilogue, the government has already won. Civilization is settling in. Law enforcement is tightening its grip. The era of outlaws is officially ending. This is why John's attempts to go straight feel both hopeful and tragic. He's trying to build a life in a world that no longer has room for men like him, no matter how hard they try to change. Yet, one of the clearest things that went wrong for the van der Linde gang becomes painfully obvious. They never planned for life after crime. While working at Pronghorn Ranch, John sees a functioning, stable environment where people cooperate, communicate, and work for mutual benefit. Things the gang never truly mastered. Dutch preached loyalty, but he never built a real foundation for survival outside the outlaw life. His leadership depended on chaos, on constantly running, on always having a bigger plan that never materialized. And because of that, John is now learning everything the gang failed to teach him. How to work for a living, how to communicate without violence, and how to genuinely earn someone's trust. But even with these positive steps forward, the ghosts of the gang remain. John's past keeps creeping back through threats, suspicions, and the looming danger that someone will eventually recognize him. The gang's fallen members, Arthur, Hosea, Lenny, represent everything John wishes he could escape. Micah and Dutch, still alive at this point, represent everything he wants to destroy. Epilogue. Part 1 shows that John hasn't escaped the gang's legacy. He's simply living in the quiet before the storm that will ultimately lead him back into conflict. In the end, Epilogue. Part 1 is a blend of hope and heartbreak. What went right is John finally taking Arthur's lessons seriously and beginning the slow climb toward redemption. What went wrong is how deeply the gang's failures are burned into him. Failures that continue to shape his identity long after the gang has died out. And it's this balance of progress and consequence that makes the epilogue so powerful. It isn't just a continuation of the story, it's the final truth about the van der Linde gang. They didn't just destroy themselves, they shaped the fate of everyone who survived.